Today, we have the pleasure of having Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal in studio. Tom Coates is here. John Scepter's here. Of course, the cat in the hat watching the hat. Frank's producing. And I'm J. Michael McCoy. It's The View from a Pew.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 244-0077. That's 244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, good afternoon. It is a Tuesday, the 22nd day of September in the Lord's year 2015, and this is a very special edition of The View from a Pew. Today we have Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal in our studio for the whole hour to discuss with him not only presidential issues, but faith and some of the things that he's looking forward to do as your next president, if you should allow that. Before we get to Bobby, your review on the Faith and Freedom Coalition dinner at the Iowa State Fairgrounds last Saturday.
It was a big event.
Into the mic, please.
It was a big event. It started at, they opened the doors at 4 o'clock. People jammed in. It was a sellout. They had over 1,000 people. I don't know what the register reported. They normally cut it in half. But we had all media from all over the place. We had the top contenders. And I think we're very fortunate, Mac, in that even Jennifer Jacobs gave the objective review that Bobby and Ted Cruz hit the biggest hits of the night. And I would have agreed with that. Now, again, Cruz came at the very end. He has a great delivery. He has a very dramatic delivery. He throws a lot of red meat to the loyalists. But I think objectively, and my wife said this too, Leanne, that Bobby gave the overall best delivery of the night, and a lot of people woke up. A lot of people still don't know him, and I think when he comes in, Mac, that's where I'd like to start, allowing him to spend the first few minutes introducing himself to our audience. I think that, in fact, I see the security coming now. And
well, I'll let you just ask him that question when he sits down.
All right.
So how long did it last?
It lasted till about 9:30. We had a long night, but they kept right on time. And here's the star of the night himself, Governor Bobby Jindal.
Tom, it's great to be with all of y'all. Thank y'all for having me today.
How you doing? Tom was just telling everybody how awesome you were Saturday night.
Well, we should keep letting him talk then. Let's not cut the man off. He's got a lot to say. No, it was a great crowd. You know, here was the best thing about being in that room. You looked around and you saw hundreds of folks that share our conservative values. You listen to the mainstream media, they try to tell you we're alone, that nobody acts and thinks like we do. You looked around that room and you saw that there are a lot of folks that still believe in our Christian values and our conservative values, that are worried about the future of our country. I've got to tell you, that's pretty encouraging.
Well, it really was. And we had over 1,000. They had a sellout. We had a lot of media there. You know that, Bobby. And I was just saying before you came in that Jennifer Jacobs write-up in the paper the next day gave you and Ted Cruz top marks. Ted, as I said, had a very dramatic delivery, but I think top to bottom, my wife said this, she's somewhat prejudiced, I am too, but she thought that you had legitimately the best performance of the night. Now, I think what I heard after that, and even in the locker room, I worked out this morning, and I even heard a guy say, well, I didn't know much about Bobby Jindal, but he kind of came on my radar with this talk. Could you spend just a few minutes introducing yourself, Governor? You know, where you come from, your family came from India, obviously, how you got here, your educational background, and your professional background, to kind of introduce yourself for the first few minutes to the audience.
Absolutely. And then I'd love to talk about what we talked about Saturday night, because there's some very important themes about why we're so mad at these so-called Republicans in Congress. So my story, look, my parents came here 45 years ago. They came to America in the search of freedom and opportunity. They came legally. And I tell folks that when they came here, I tell folks that want to come to our country, you should come legally, learn English, adopt our values, roll up your sleeves, and get to work. My parents, they've lived the American dream. My dad's one of 9, grew up in a house without electricity, without running water, was the only one to get past the 5th grade. I know, Tom, we heard these stories every single day growing up. He would tell us every day that we had it lucky. Anyway, I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Went to public schools there. I went to college over in Rhode Island. I've worked in healthcare is my background. I was in Congress a couple of terms. I was an assistant secretary of Health and Human Services under President Bush. I was the head of the health department in my state, the head of the University of Louisiana system. I was the head of the Bipartisan Commission on the Future of Medicare in the 90s. But I've been a two-term governor, and I'll tell you the most important things to know about me. I became a Christian at the age of 16. I accepted Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. It was a 7-year journey, spiritual journey. It didn't happen overnight. I will tell you this, and your listeners, I encourage everybody out there to plant those seeds of the gospel. We're not always called to reap. We are called to sow. And I tell you that for 7 years, I had friends that were encouraging in my life, even when they were tempted to give up. They know it's tough. I mean, 7 years, you'd think at some point, all right, enough's enough. My best friend gave me a Bible for Christmas when I didn't want it. And he gave it to me. He knew I needed it. Now, he was smart. He put my name on the front cover. He knew I wouldn't throw it away. I couldn't give it away if it had my name on it. And so I kept that Bible. I ended up reading it cover to cover after my grandfather died. And I ended up in a non-denominational church. And when they showed Jesus being crucified on the cross in a movie, in the middle of a musical, I don't know why God hit me in that moment, but he hit me harder than I've ever been hit before. It just hit me. If that's really the Son of God and he's dying for me, I don't mean he's dying for all of humanity. It was more personal than that. If he's up there on that cross because of Bobby Jindal and my sins, what I have done, what I have failed to do, how arrogant for me to do anything but get on my knees and worship him. Youth pastor came out and said, look, if you've not accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, we want you to fill out a card. I did. We started studying Scripture together, and it's like the words jumped off the page as we read the Gospels in the New Testament. It was like Jesus was talking to me from 2,000 years ago. So I became Christian at the age of 16. I've now been married 18 years. My bride and I, my wife and I, we got 3 great kids, 13, 11, and 9. 13-year-old's a little girl who's 13 going on 30. She's in high school, and unfortunately for Daddy, she, I think, is at that age where they begin to discover boys. I'm trying to do everything I can to stop that from happening. But, this is how you know you've got smart children. She started asking me, well, because my wife and I met in high school. We didn't date then, but we met in high school. She goes, well, when did you and Mommy date? And I realized she was trying to gather information for herself. And I said, sweetheart, look, I didn't kiss your mommy till we were 30. And she said, well, you were married before. I said, you can get married. I just don't want you dating a boy. I mean, that's not the question you asked me. But look, bottom line, 2-term governor of Louisiana, and I'm here, and the reason, this is the most, politically, the most important reason I'm running for president. The idea of America is slipping away from us. What do I mean by that? You couldn't make up what we have seen these last 7 years. Planned Parenthood is selling babies' organs and parts across this country. We got a president who's declared war on trans fats and a truce with Iran. We got a president who criticizes America, you won't stand with Israel, criticizes Christians, yet won't say the words radical Islamic terrorism. We got a government, they added a new entitlement program. We can't afford the government we've got. $18 trillion of debt, no plan anybody in D.C. to pay it back. We've got a record number of folks on food stamps, record low participation rate in the workforce. We got a Supreme Court that thinks they're smarter than God and can redefine marriage, a left that wants to take God out of the public square. They don't want any mention of God in our society. The idea of America is slipping away. I think we've got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rescue the idea of America, to apply our conservative principles. Shame on us if we don't do it, and every one of us will be called to account. What did we do when the idea of America was slipping away? I don't know about you, but as long as I've got breath in my body, as long as I've got blood in my veins, I'm going to give it everything I've got to save this idea of America. Shame on those fools in D.C. if they won't fight for America, but shame on us. And I will say this, I almost have more respect for the honest socialist on the other side of this.
Bernie.
That's right, Bernie. And look, at least he's honest.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of lying conservatives on our side. I mean, they say one thing and they do another. At least the other side fights for their beliefs. Our guys, they need a backbone transplant. I'm not sure what's wrong with them. I call them the surrender caucus. They never fight. Much less win. They never even show up and fight. So this is the most important election of our lifetimes. The idea of America is what's at stake.
Well, Governor, you've said a mouthful just on the introduction. I applaud you for that. You made a comment that resonated with some of us, a lot of us in the room, because early in the proceedings, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, Donald Trump, comes in and he waves his Bible around, and it shows that his mother gave him the Bible and so forth. You had an interesting comment when you started out on your crusade, because I think you recognize that the very frustration that you just evidenced, the frustration of the Republicans and the conservatives over our leadership, to some degree, that's a frustration with the media as well. And you tapped in on that in Ames. You found out what a reaction you got from coming back on the media. But much of it's the leadership, the Boehners, the McConnells, and the leadership that the Lindsey Grahams that you've taken on. Appreciate that. Those people that get along to go along, and they want to pick their fights, and they don't really want to stand up. But you on the Trump issue, and he is a place marker for that frustration. You said something about carrying out the Bible. You want to repeat that comment for the listener? I thought it was pretty clever.
I will. Look, I said Trump was asked his favorite book. He said it was the Bible. And then they asked him a follow-up question. Name one scriptural verse that had an impact or was important to him, and he couldn't name one. That's well, folks, it's obvious Donald Trump has never read the Bible. And the way you know he hasn't read the Bible is because his name's not in the Bible. He would only read books that are about him. Now, let's give Donald Trump his due. I like the idea of Donald Trump. I like the idea of an outsider, somebody who's politically incorrect, who wants to take on the establishment. That is great. I think he's entertaining. I think it was great when he gave out Lindsey Graham's phone number. I thought it was great when he said the crowds were falling asleep at Jeb Bush rallies. I thought it was great when he gave kids helicopter rides at the state fair here in Iowa. The idea of Donald Trump's great. The reality of Donald Trump is different. The reality is Donald Trump doesn't believe in anything. He's not a conservative or a liberal, a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. He is for Donald Trump. And the reality is he borrowed Reagan's slogan, "Make America Great." That's wonderful. He wants to make Donald Trump great. Conservatives have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rescue our country and apply our principles. We should turn to our principles, not to a man who believes in nothing but himself. It's time to tell him he's fired. Put him on the elevator, send him down. Now, I do think he's done us a great service by pointing out that the leaders in D.C. are full of nonsense. And you mentioned, I took on Lindsey Graham at this last debate, and it frustrates me to hear Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, and all these other guys in D.C. say, well, we can't defund Planned Parenthood because, the president won't let us, or we can't stop the Iran deal. The president won't let us. This is nonsense. After these barbaric videos, if they can't defund Planned Parenthood, if the Republican Party cannot make protecting innocent human life a winning issue nationally, it is time to ask, why do we have a Republican Party? Is it time to fold the tents and start a new movement? If we can't win now, we cancel the Planned Parenthood contract in Louisiana so that they're not getting taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, and congratulations for that, too. Kudos to you.
Well, they tried to protest at the front of the mansion, so we said, fine. We showed those videos outdoor over and over and over so they'd be forced to... By the way, it works like mosquito repellent. You play those videos, it keeps protesters away, we found out.
It was you mentioned that in your talk at the event Saturday night, too, and it got a huge applause. And, Matt, can you imagine... we had Ed Fallon and his bunch of nuts from CCI come around and do some of that protest. I don't know if you saw them, but they were around outside the building on Saturday night. Can you imagine, as you say, it would be like insect repellent to these kind of nut jobs that come around and like to make a hit out of protesting. Bobby, I think that was brilliant, and it'd be nice instead of seeing the homosexual flag flown over the White House as we did on that appalling Supreme Court decision, we would actually see the Planned Parenthood tape videos being played at the White House. That would be absolutely outstanding, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Governor Bobby Jindal is our guest today. Met his wife at 16, got married at 18, 3 children, has a wonderful resume of serving the state of Louisiana as well as his government. I think you're the only governor who has defunded Planned Parenthood in their state. Would that be right?
I think some are beginning to do that now. I wish more would. I'll tell you, and this is what you face when you do this. So the Obama administration has joined Planned Parenthood in taking us to court. He doesn't have time to watch the videos. He's got time to sue us. Well, I've told them they can't intimidate us. They're not going to stop us. They can take us to court wherever they want. We're going to stand up for innocent human life.
All right, we're going to continue this opportunity to talk with Bobby. You're listening to The Truth, 99.3 here on a Tuesday afternoon. We're very thankful that you took some time today, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. We are on the radio for you every day from 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A special surprise this afternoon at 3. A good friend of mine, he's been on this show before. He'll be filling in for Steve Deace for the next couple of weeks. Steve Noble on the East Coast. You're going to love this guy. He's great. He comes up after Salem Radio Network News, and that's at 3 o'clock this afternoon. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Thanks for listening. If I haven't told you lately, love this job. Couldn't do it without you. right here on The Truth.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I've purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
All right, good afternoon, 21 minutes after the hour on this Tuesday, the 22nd day of September, live here on The Truth. That's right, we call this radio station The Truth. You know, today, everybody wants to queer those lines and blur them of what true and isn't true. And everybody thinks because you've got the right to say it, that it must be the right thing to say. And that's not true. You open Scripture, you read the words in red, you pray, you'll know what the truth is. And don't let anybody in any business, in any work environment, in any church, especially in church, don't let them preach a false gospel to you. The words in red are what our Lord and Savior said, and that's the truth. And we're glad to stand for that here on this radio station 24/7. Governor Bobby Jindal is our guest today. Louisiana governor probably has stood out more than any candidate in his voice against Planned Parenthood at the governor's mansion in Louisiana when the protesters were running up and down because you did defund Planned Parenthood. You came out and said, we're going to do it, and then you did it. And while the protesters were out there, you put big screen TVs out so they could watch the videos of baby parts being dismantled and sold.
You know, absolutely. They don't want to talk about these videos. The left wants to instead investigate the groups that did the videos. The president wants to sue me. I said during the first debate, Planned Parenthood better hope that Hillary Clinton wins this presidency because President Jindal is going to send the IRS and the Department of Justice to investigate Planned Parenthood. When I said that, the media came all at me. The left, the liberal media came at me after the debate. So, well, you can't say that. You didn't mean. I said, absolutely, I meant that. We will send the Department of Justice, the IRS, the EPA, OSHA, any other government agency we can find to investigate Planned Parenthood. I'm pro-life. We've been the most pro-life state 6 years in a row under my leadership as governor. Even if you're not yet pro-life, I would hope these videos would shock the conscience of a country. I would hope people that even if they're not yet pro-life would look and say, this should not be done in our country. It should not be done in our name. Should not be done with our dollars. That we need to put an end to this. And there's a lot of talk about whether they broke this law or that law, and that needs to be investigated. But what is not disputable is that it's barbaric. You see this woman eating her salad, drinking her wine, and talking about baby parts like they were nothing.
And how much there are.
Oh, it's just disgusting. And I would hope this would, and again, we were talking earlier during one of the breaks, Hillary Clinton, all these science deniers on the left, they don't want to say babies. They want to say specimens or tissue because they don't want to admit that that's really a child, really a baby. That shows you how they're trying to hide from the truth.
Can you explain to us how the federal government gets interwoven, the Medicaid funding? I know there was an article in the paper where Branstad had asked, are we funding abortions? And no. I mean, in essence, they're saying, oh, no, your money goes into this pocket. I pay for my abortions out of this one. Can you explain to us and the audience the interwoven of the federal government's money with the state money and how that impacts?
Sure. And look, I think the left wants to try to distract us and say, oh, this is about women's health care, or this is about, pap smears or mammograms. Nonsense. We're not saying we're against preventative and routine health care for women, and that will continue to go on. So let me use Louisiana as an example. In Louisiana, Planned Parenthood has 2 clinics. They don't do any abortions in Louisiana. They want to build a center in New Orleans to do abortions. We have said we're not giving them any permits. Instead, we're doing this investigation. We've asked the FBI and Texas to help us. But we still cancel their Medicaid contracts. Now, to give you an idea of the scope of what they do, they try to make this about, oh, well, you're going to cut off women's health services. We spend in Louisiana collectively about $19 million on reproductive health and other services under this category. It's Medicaid, where the federal government pays about 65%, the state pays 35% in a matching program. Planned Parenthood gets less than $300,000 out of that $19 million. They are 2 clinics in Louisiana. There are hundreds of other providers you can go to get the routine healthcare services they always talk about. So don't let the left will try to confuse this issue and say, oh, well, if you're against taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood, you must be against women's health. That's nonsense. Now, unfortunately, at one point, Jeb had made some unfortunate comments where you talked, and I don't know why he talked about this. He said something about cutting women's health care funding. But let's be very clear about this. This is about saying Planned Parenthood, what they have done, what they are doing is barbaric. These videos have captured them talking about what's barbaric, and that needs to stop. Not only do we need to cut off our funding, we need to investigate them. Look, the reality is we can all be for. I don't think there are not a whole lot of folks out there saying we don't want to help women get the routine and preventative health care services they want, but there are a lot of us saying you don't have to go to Planned Parenthood to get those services. There are a lot of other doctors' offices. There are a lot of other local county or parish clinics. There are a lot of other places you can go to get those services where those providers aren't doing abortions. And so in Louisiana, even though they don't do abortions in Louisiana, they're part of their parent entity does do abortions in other states. And Tom, you're exactly right. Look, the money is fungible. And the other point is that why in the world would we want to support an organization that's been caught? Now, here's one of the things I think is changing in America. I think more and more people are becoming pro-life, in part because I think as the technology gets better, I think as people see these 3D sonograms, it's becoming more and more obvious to more and more people those are babies. When we were having our kids, we have 3 kids, and the funny thing is, I could never see what was in those sonograms. I don't know about you guys, but you're in there and they show you, it looked like fuzz to me. And at some point you feel guilty because the nurse or the doctor said, oh yeah, well they're sitting there saying, look at that cute baby. He looks just like you. He's waving that. And I don't see anything. And I'm saying, but you feel like an idiot. So at some point you go, oh yeah, I see him. And then the doctor leaves and you ask your wife and she goes, I didn't see anything. But now with these 3D sonograms, my brother has a 2-year-old baby boy. When they got their sonogram done, boy, that's great. They'll actually sell you a picture. The hospitals, for $9.99, you go buy your baby's first picture. So I think as the technology has changed, the pro-life folks, our numbers are growing. I think the other side's on the defensive here. And look, don't let them change the topic. Planned Parenthood, what they were doing is barbaric. It is past time we defund them. But this is really a symptom of a bigger issue, which is we got Senate and House Republicans that don't fight for our beliefs. They said they'd stop amnesty. They said they'd stop Obamacare. They said they would stop this Iran deal. They didn't do any of it. I wish they had half the fight in them. I don't like what Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi are doing to this country, but they crammed Obamacare down our throats, and they didn't worry about what the press said about them. They didn't worry about whether they look good or not. They just did it. I want our side to follow the Constitution and law, but if the other side's willing to fight for socialism so hard, why won't our side fight for America just as hard back?
Governor Bobby Jindal is our guest today, Louisiana governor. He is in Iowa, of course, for the caucuses. If you had a chance to see him at the Faith and Freedom Coalition dinner Saturday night, wow. He lit the place on fire. I think you got more standing O's than anybody. Now, I count standing O's, but I think you had more than anybody. I want to talk about end of life, right to life in a minute. But first, Bob Montserrat, who has been my co-host for many years, has a spiritual question, if you're comfortable with that.
Absolutely.
Well, probably a couple of them. You mentioned you were pro-life, and I was wondering, is that something that happened since you became a believer, or were you always pro-life even before?
I'll tell you. Actually, it's a great question. So I told you it took 7 years for me to become a Christian. One of the critical moments in my conversion experience, there was my mind had wandered. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't reading Scripture. And I tell folks, God can use whatever's in your lives to bring you back closer to Him. I was a teenage high school boy at that time. He used a teenage high school girl to get my attention. It kind of makes sense when you think about it. That's what boys are obsessed with. There was this pretty girl in my high school that I liked, and I never had the courage to talk to her. My friends were tired of hearing about it. They said, if you like her, tell her, stop telling us. Kind of good advice. So one day after a school event, I went up to her, and it was amazing. Here was this pretty girl, and we started talking, and I couldn't believe she was interested in me, and I was interested in her, and it was easy to talk to her. And then I asked her a very simple question. I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, public high school. Most of my friends, they wanted to be teachers or nurses or doctors or business people, just normal stuff. My little boys, they want to play professional football and baseball. That's what kids dream about. So I asked this girl, and she gave me an answer I'd never heard before. She said, I want to be a United States Supreme Court justice.
Wow.
I remember thinking, who in the world wants to be?
How old is she?
We were teenagers, so he was like probably 15 or so. And I'm thinking, who in the world wants to be that? So I asked her, why would you pick that? Of all the things you could pick, why that? And she said, because I want to help save innocent human lives in America. Now, my first reaction was, how do we get on such a serious topic? I just want to talk to our pretty girl. Where'd this come from? But there was something that touched me. I knew that there was something in her life that was missing in mine. There was a sense of love and purpose and fulfillment. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I had to have it. I would later realize it was the Holy Spirit that was in her life that was missing in mine. So it was not an issue I thought about a lot. Look, I was a 15-year-old boy, and so growing up, I didn't have any sisters. It wasn't something I'd ever thought about or talked about. It wasn't like something that had come up at school or with my household. So I hadn't thought about it a lot. This was the first time anybody had ever talked to me about it, and it shook me up because it made me, and again, that was just shortly before I went to that church where I saw the film. So it had a huge impact on me. And of course, as a believer, I've been pro-life, and as I've grown older and been involved in public policy and healthcare, I've been 100% pro-life. But that was really the first time somebody had talked to me seriously about the issue.
The other question I had, if I can do that, Mac, since you are a believer and you proclaim that, which I think is awesome, were you... Part of it is, dying to self and allowing the Lord to lead you and guide you in everything you do. Was there a point in your life where you had a clear directive to run for office or to run for president?
Sure, that's a great question. Whenever I've been asked, first time I ran for office, I ran for governor in 2003, and it made no sense to anybody except maybe me and my wife. I mean, we had never run for anything before. I was younger than everybody else running, and I was running for governor against the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, the Lieutenant Governor, the Attorney General, all these folks with a lot more experience than me. And I remember the reporters asked me, well, are you going to run? You're thinking about running? I said, well, my wife and I were going to go pray about it. And they all looked at me, a lot of them looked at me funny, like, well, you mean you're going to go take a poll? Or are you going to go do some fundraising? I said, no, I'm going to pray. I said, I can't imagine how I would make a big decision in my life unless I was praying about it and discerning God's will for me. And I remember telling a supporter later on, I said, look, I've prayed about this, and I really believe this is where God wants me, where I'm supposed to be. Now, I said, God didn't tell me I was going to win. I mean, and it's not that he said, all right, you're going to get X% of the vote, and this is what's going to happen. But anybody that's out there, whatever you do, whatever your vocation, whether you're raising your kids, whether you have a paid job, whatever you do, there is this feeling when you know that you are where you're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean God predicts you're going to get a promotion at work. He doesn't predict that you're going to win everything or that everything's going to turn out the way you want. One of the things I've had to struggle with my spiritual life consistently is I always want to know what's going to happen. Now, I'm a planner. Look, most of us, we want to know where are we going to be 5 years from now? Where are we going to be from 10 years from now? And God has consistently in my life taught me over and over, trust me. You know, just like Scripture tells us, why do we worry? The birds, I mean, you look at nature, you look at, of course he's going to take care of us. And so now I understand we have a role to play. I'm not saying you just sit at home and wait for God to you've got to work. But one of the things I've learned in my spiritual life, my spiritual path is, all right, have faith in God. He's got a plan that's greater for us than we can imagine for ourselves. So absolutely, we prayed about that before we ran for office. And look, I just, before I'd make any big decision in life, of course, my wife and I would go in prayer, and I emphasize my wife and I. We do that together, as a family. I mean, I couldn't do this without the support of my family. I couldn't do this without. We've got 3 great kids, but my wife, she's the one that makes sure that there is somebody home when the kids get home from school. She's a stay-at-home mom, and she's there to make sure there's somebody there to help them with their homework, to take them to all the sports practices. I do as much of that as I can, but she's there to make sure they got a predictable lifestyle, and they know that. They know that they're our priority. So absolutely, it's something that I prayed about. And it made, look, my parents, my dad, when I went to school, my dad said, son, now remember, my dad was the first in the family to get past the 5th grade. He said you could study whatever you want when you went to school. I said, really? And he said, yeah, you can be any kind of doctor you want to be.
Well, see, when I misspoke a minute ago and said Dr. Jindal, I was close.
You knew what you were talking about.
All right, Governor Bobby is in the studio this afternoon, and we come back, ideas for an administration. And how about the end-of-life rights? We'll talk to Bobby about that here live on The Truth on 99.3.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us. to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
8 minutes after the hour on this Tuesday, the 22nd day of September in the Lord's year 2015. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Coming up today at 3 o'clock, Salem Radio Network News. And then Steve Noble, someone who's I think you're going to love. He's going to be taking the 3 to 5 o'clock hours for Steve Dace temporarily. All right, so, Bobby, I got to tell you something. So, my pastor is a busy, busy guy. Okay, we have a church of 5 campuses, Lutheran, 5 campuses, and we had almost 30,000 people come to, 9 different Christmas services. I mean, God's on the move in that church.
That's great.
And Mike comes on the radio, and we talk about stuff. And Mike says when you talk politics and religion, you get politics. So out of the blue, this guy by the name of John Scepter, he's the individual sitting in front of you on the yellow shirt, he calls up Pastor Mike, and he's got this great idea for Bobby Jindal. And can you please put me in touch with him? And, of course, I think Mike said to you, I can get in touch with God easier than I can get in touch with Bobby Jindal. But let me introduce you to Mac. And John and I sat down one day, and he had this unique idea. And I want him to bounce it off of you and just kind of give us an idea of why we don't operate like this, because it makes a lot of sense to me. Go ahead, John. Well, you got a couple minutes.
First of all, Governor, this came to me. I was actually in Slidell.
Oh, wow.
I was working on a project in Slidell, and I was asking the Lord, what can I do? What can I do? You know? And this idea came to me, but it came to me for you. This idea I could take to probably any candidate, regardless of their political affiliate, and want to use it. But it was for you. And so I think Matt got it to you first, and you kind of went, well, you know, this is kind of hard to do. You're looking at getting the best of the best and this and that. But see, I kept trying to get it to you and get to you and talk to you about it because I believed the Lord was telling me to tell you about it. And it is picking your cabinet now. And picking people that I believe the Lord laid on my heart to give to you, to say, bring these people together, and instead of running as Bobby Jindal for president, it is Team Jindal. And the thing that makes sense about this is right now you got a billionaire that can run his mouth anywhere he wants. But you put your team together, and you've got them all over the country saying the same thing. And this saying, this is my administration, this is what I'm going to do. And it was encouraging for me to hear you say, you know, the Holy Spirit, because I have struggled to let this go, haven't I, Mac?
Yeah,
I mean,
you really have.
I have struggled to get to you because I knew this message was for you. It wasn't for Cruz. It wasn't for anybody else. For some reason, I was in Slidell, and this message was for you, and I can't get to you.
All right, John, thank you very much. You've gotten to him. His idea is basically to pick your cabinet before the convention comes around so people will know your team rather than just you and your VP. But it's never been done. Sure. Why not? What don't I know about politics? What doesn't John or Tom or anybody know about politics that says, oh, well, that wouldn't work?
No, I think there could be merit to that. I think it's important. I think right now voters are so distrustful of the politicians and the parties. I think it would be helpful to show people, look, I'm going to find people, because here's what I'm looking for in a cabinet. I'm looking for people that share our values, because what happens too often is a Republican gets elected president, and these cabinet officials, they go native.
Yes.
They go there and they go run these agencies,
right.
And they start lobbying, we need more money, more power for these agencies. Instead of taking the president's agenda and saying, I'm here to shrink this agency, I'm here to cut spending, right. Cut power. You know, I say this, I learned this in the business world. If somebody buys an $800 hammer, everything begins to look like a nail. If you run an agency, you want it to have as much power as too often it goes to their head, their egos, they forget why they're there. So I think there's a lot of merit in saying, here's what too many presidents do. They try to fill their cabinet based on what's politically expedient. So they look for balance, they look for geography, they look for who can help me politically. Nonsense. This is too important of an election. This needs to be about who are the people that are going to go in there and get this job done, because slowing the growth rate of government's not enough. We got to shrink the size of government.
Bobby, the last one I remember that did that was Ronald Reagan with Bill Bennett as the Secretary of Education. And he went in there with a mission to eventually get rid of the Department of Education. And, of course, eventually Congress saw what was happening. He was cutting it. But that would be. But some of the obvious ones, guys, are running against Bobby right now. Some of the best cabinet position people we could start mentioning them might very well be running against him. So it might be very difficult to really set up the.
And that's why I think it's a good idea. It may be an issue of timing, because you're right. Some of the people you may want may not be willing to have their names put out like that until they realize, all right, if they're not going to be the ones, that there is a way for them to still serve their country. But I do think it's important to let voters know before the election what they're getting. Because otherwise, you vote for somebody, you think you're getting a conservative, and then they appoint folks that don't share that agenda, and you think, well, wait a minute, how did this happen? And it's not just cabinet members, it's Supreme Court justices as well. Look, if the Republican justices had voted the way they were supposed to, we wouldn't have the ruling on marriage. We wouldn't have the 2 rulings on Obamacare. It wasn't the Democratic judges. It was the Republican judges that flipped. Everybody knew how the Democratic judges were going to rule.
I know, it's just
how
crazy.
does Lindsey Graham vote for the one that he voted for? I mean, we have the Democrats stand up and do everything they can to stop us. We had, and then we kowtow and we roll over, and instead of a Bork, we get a Kennedy. I mean, it makes no sense that they're, as you say, willing to fight for everything from judges to policy, and we roll over. Lindsey, I'm glad you took him to task. I wish we could get him in this studio, Mac, because I think there's some other questions.
He's been asking for him. All right, let's switch for a moment to the Iran deal. This just doesn't make any sense to me. How does it make sense?
It makes no sense. Look, the Iranians conned President Obama. President Obama conned Congress. 2 things that Congress should never have done or they should do now. One, they should never have passed this bad Corker bill. It takes a 2/3 vote to approve a treaty. They flipped it on its head. Now it takes a 2/3 vote to reject this treaty. Every Senate Republican except Senator Cotton voted for it. That includes all those Senate Republicans running for president, meaning Cruz and Rubio and Lindsey Graham and Rand Paul. They should never have voted for this bad deal. Now that they have it, they should go to the president and say, you're not in compliance. You were supposed to give us the full deal. We didn't get the secret side deals that you apparently have. We never got to see those. And at the very least, I challenged Lindsey up this during the debate. Why won't these senators use the nuclear option to stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power? Why not say it takes 51 votes? We don't need 60 votes. 60 votes is not anywhere written in the Constitution. This is one of these traditions, one of these rules in the Senate. They are so worried about not rocking the boat. These politicians, they go to D.C. in the Republican Party. They want the Washington Post to like them. They want the New York Times to like them. They want to be invited to the right cocktail parties. It's why we need term limits. It's why we need them to live under the same rules they apply to the rest of us. We need to stop them from becoming lobbyists. We need to have part-time citizen legislators the way the Founding Fathers intended. Otherwise, they live in their own separate world. They exempt themselves from all these different rules and regulations they pass for the rest of us. We must not allow Iran to become a nuclear power.
I agree. And the other thing, we got to get money out of politics. I mean, how do we, my wife said the other day, somebody heard that it was going to cost $1 billion for the presidential candidates to run. So Hillary will spend $1 billion or whoever it is, and you'll spend $1 billion. What could we do with $2 billion?
Well, I think Hillary's going to spend $2 billion. I don't think it'll be just $1 billion. Well, a couple of things. One, I think you need more transparency so people know where the money's coming from. They can decide who they want to vote for, because both sides try to stop the other sides from speaking, and that never works. Competition works. But here's the other thing. What's really happening in the Republican Party, when you talk about money in politics, we're not the party of big government. That's a good thing. But we're becoming the party of big business, and we got to put a stop to that. The reason you got amnesty and open borders on the table, big business wants it. The reason Common Core is on the table, big business wants it. The big business ones are the ones that are telling those Republicans, don't fight about Planned Parenthood, reauthorize this and that. It's big business, and it's time for the Republican Party to remember, we hired them, we can fire them. They don't work for the big business folks.
All right, we're coming up on our last break. Governor Bobby Jindal is in the studio. We have greatly appreciated your time here. We'll come back with just a little more time, and I want to talk about right to life and into life, as this has become something very personal for my wife and I. Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat. John Scepter joins us along with Tom Coates. Frank is producing, and I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you. Right here on The Truth, 99.3, powered by webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
Tuesday, September 21st, coming up on the top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News, and then Steve Noble filling in for Steve Deace this afternoon. Real quickly, my 91-year-old mother-in-law, who was the closest thing to Jesus I've ever met in my life, pastor's daughter, pastor's granddaughter, raised 5 kids, made their own clothes. I mean, just that story. She'd get up and without a huff and a puff, without any attitude, if somebody was talking about somebody else at the table that she thought was gossip or wasn't right, she'd just nicely get up and go and do something. 91 years old, just had her driver's license renewed. Lives by herself, on her own, with no care at all. She goes into the hospital on December 26th last year, and the insurance company codes her. Well, she's 91. We're not going to do much here. She's got a bleeding ulcer, but we're not going to figure that out exactly. We're just going to put her on the drip, make her comfortable, and let nature take its course. For the next 82 days, my wife and her sister fought for the life of her mother. And unfortunately, on March 17th, lost that life. What we have discovered, and you don't want to mess with my wife. If you think you married up, you ought to see my married up. My wife has done hundreds of hours in research, got all the paperwork from the hospitals, etc. Come to find out that inside of Obamacare, there is something called end-of-life counseling. And if I'm your doctor, I get to sit down and ask you these questions determined by the insurance company, not by the hospital. And I get $5,000 as a doctor. And I could do that 10 times a day, and they'll pay me for that because they save a lot of money by giving me $5,000 rather than having you in the hospital for all these days. Congressman King, I don't know if you know Congressman King, he's introduced a bill, H.R. 3251, which would stop this advanced care planning and go back to what hospitals and doctors were supposed to do, and that's do everything we can to save a life rather than do everything we can to end a life. How do you think in a Jindal administration the end-of-life rights might be lifted up and held to a standard that God predicts, not some doctor or insurance company?
No, that's exactly right. Look, I had the privilege, I actually served in Congress with Congressman King, so I know Steve well from my days up there. Look, what we're seeing is the inevitable result of a society that begins to value human beings, not because we were created in the image of God, but in terms of what we can contribute economically. And that's wrong. What makes us valuable is not our IQ, it's not our net worth. What makes us valuable, every one of us here is a sinner. And every one of us here is valuable because we were created in God's image and he died for us. And being pro-life means consistently being pro-life.
Yeah.
For the unborn as well as the end of life as well. And what I worry about is that we have historically said the job of our healthcare providers is to do everything they can to keep us healthy, to keep us alive. And now what you've seen in Europe is beginning to come over here where people are saying, well, maybe we need to start talking explicitly about euthanasia and other things. That would be a tragic mistake.
Well, they just did it in California.
Well, and I think that there is a reason for so long we have purposely said that the whole point, if you're in the medical profession, if you take that oath to at first do no harm. If you're in the medical profession, you're there to preserve life. You're there to fight to help keep your patient healthy. As a patient, forget being a governor, forget being a candidate for president. If I'm a patient, I want to know my doctor, that hospital, is doing everything they can to fight to get me better. I don't want in the back of my mind to be worried, well, are they doing a cost-benefit analysis in the back room saying, well, is his life worth saving or not? Is he valuable enough to society or not? I think that's awful. And I think that there are so many reasons to be worried about the government's growing intrusion into healthcare. One of them is we see in our society this move away from valuing people as being valuable because we're created in God's image. And we got to remind folks that's what makes us inherently valuable. And I'm sorry about what happened with your mother-in-law. That's awful.
Well, she's in heaven. There's no doubt in our mind. And this has given my wife, at 61 years old, a passion for life. And she's going all the way with this thing. She's not going to stop until somebody walks up to her and says, because of what you did, my mother had her life saved.
Good for her.
They couldn't put her down. Thomas?
Real quick, Bobby. You and I talked off the air. I want to hit it again. I've been predicting with different ones, Steve King, we have Steve Scheffler in recently, that Hillary, once again, just like in 08, gets forced out. Whether the Justice Department comes and knocks on our door and says, we've got criminal indictments, step down and support our candidate. Our candidate is Joe Biden. I predict that in the next few weeks anyway, at least enough to get him into that first debate. They're not going to have very many over there. That he gets in, he chooses Elizabeth Warren as his running mate, and Hillary once again is pushed out either one way or another. Your thoughts on that?
Look, I think she's one email away from being indicted, going to jail. The reality is she's sworn she's given all of her emails. Only the Russians and Chinese hackers really know what were in those emails. We may never get to see them. You make an interesting argument. I hadn't thought about that before in that way. The reality is I think she's a very weak candidate. She is now going through the South. She's in my home state today defending socialized medicine. I told her, she should have Bernie Sanders up on stage with her. And I'd offered to debate her. I said, look, she's in my state because we did not expand Medicaid. We said, look, we're not implementing Obamacare. We don't need more people dependent on government. We stood up against that time and time again. And she's in my state being critical of that. And my message to her is she started, remember Hillary Care in the 90s. Mm-hmm. That's what led to us with Obamacare. That's what's leading us down this path towards socialized medicine. So no wonder she's such a big proponent of Obamacare. But I agree with you. I think she's a weak candidate. And we'll see if Biden decides to run or not. Can you imagine trying to defend he literally would be the third term of President Obama. Yeah. Talk about a hard case to have for anybody to have to make.
Well, they don't like each other, Obama's and Clinton, so I think it's a better extension for Obama than Hillary would be.
If you win the nomination for the Republican presidency, who are a couple of your favorites for vice president?
Well, here's the type of person I want. I want somebody. Too often, the president the candidate tries to pick somebody who's going to balance them or help them with votes in a different geography. That's nonsense. I want somebody two things that are important. Number one, are they ready to do the job on the first day? God forbid if something were to happen to me. And then secondly, you absolutely want somebody who shares our conservative convictions, our principles, our beliefs, because this cannot be, look, I've said this before, just sending any Republican in the White House isn't good enough. Our country's at stake here. I want somebody who's just as committed to fighting to shrink the size of government, who's committed for religious liberty, protecting innocent human life, all the issues we've been talking about today that are so important. If they're not fully committed to that, they shouldn't be vice president. They shouldn't be in the administration. They shouldn't be in one of these senior positions.
All right, last question. What disciple are you most like?
It's a great question. I would say this, as a convert to Christianity, I look at St. Peter for this reason. I still, one of my favorite images in the Bible is him promising Jesus, I'm going to be faithful. Everybody else will leave you. I'm not. He was so enthusiastic. He just jumped. His heart led him to jump first and think second. And then 3 times he denies, as Jesus predicts for him, he denies him 3 times. And what I love about Peter is just this pure enthusiasm, this wanting to just jump off a cliff for Jesus, even above and beyond his human weakness and capabilities. I hope that to my dying breath, I'll always have that desire to serve the Lord. And as a convert, I remember thinking, boy, I would have loved, sometimes as a new Christian, you think, boy, I wish I had been there. I wouldn't have denied him. Every day in our lives, we are tempted and we are given opportunities to embrace the Lord or deny him, and all of us fall short. But I love Peter's enthusiasm.
All right, Governor, thank you very much for being here. Tom, thanks for the hard work that you did. Taylor and the gentleman outside with you, thank you very much. Thank you very much for John and Bob being here, for Frank producing. And I just ask you one thing. Tonight when you go home, there's somebody in the back of your mind that lives rent-free. You need to forgive them. You're taking the poison and you expect them to be in pain. That's not the way it works. So today, forgive them, because as you forgive, you will be forgiven. I'll see you in church.